Hello and welcome to DTB India. Today we have with us Saloni Roy, Senior Director, Deloitte India. Welcome Saloni. Can you tell our viewers why do we need GST and what factors have prompted the need for GST?
There are several factors which have prompted the need for GST. Today, if you see our country on the indirect tax front has several indirect taxes. We have taxes at the central level, the state level, the local level. Central taxes are service tax, excise duty, there's customs. Local taxes, there's VAT, there is purchase tax and entry tax. At the local level, you might have octroi or similar levies. So there are a multitude of taxes, and this makes it difficult for businesses to operate. There are also issues regarding cascading of taxes. There is varying rates of taxes across different states. All these factors lead to a requirement for a GST system.
Okay, so when will the GST be introduced? Is there a timeline?
So the Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, in 2007-8, in his budget of 2007-8, had indicated that he would like to see a GST system introduced in India by April 2010. We are now in 2013, mid-2013, and we still are not very close to a GST system. There is an empowered committee of state finance ministers working, as well as a team at the center, working towards introduction of GST. But it's difficult to put a time frame today, and it's a little unclear, if I may say hazy, especially since we have elections around the corner next year. It'll be good to see GST being introduced sooner rather than later.
What taxes will be subsumed within GST?
There will be various taxes which will be subsumed within GST. Central sales tax, excise, service tax, a part of customs duty, for example, additional duty of customs, special additional duty of customs. Basic customs duty will continue to remain outside GST. VAT is expected to be part of GST. Purchase tax, entertainment tax, luxury tax, entry tax, all these are proposed to be part of GST. Though octroi, the situation on treatment of octroi is still not sure. There has been a proposal by the centre of a compensation to the Maharashtra government, but those details still need to be worked out.
So will all sectors be covered?
Ideally, GST should cover all sectors, but the Constitutional Amendment Bill excludes a couple of sectors, essentially certain petroleum products, as well as alcohol for human consumption. So these two sectors are kept outside. It's preferable if all sectors are made part of the GST system, because excluding certain sectors could again lead to cascading and imperfections in the indirect tax system.
So what are the proposed rates for GST?
Today, the rates of GST are still not known. Originally, a rate or revenue neutral rate of 12% was suggested. Thereafter, a rate on a staggered basis of 16% was proposed for both goods and services. Recently, there was some discussion that the rate would be somewhere around 24%. This will be the combined rate, both the central as well as the state. It's still not clear. Just to give you a perspective, globally GST, again we've seen in different countries there are varying rates. Norway has the highest rate, which is at 25%. Singapore and Thailand have rates of 7%. Japan levies GST at 5%.
What is the status of the Constitution Amendment Bill?
Amendment to the Constitution is required essentially because the Constitution, when it was envisaged, though it considered revenue for both the centre as well as the state, it gave power to the centre to levy tax on certain transactions and again reserved other sectors for the state. To take this forward, the centre had the power to levy tax on manufacture of goods, on provision of services, whereas states had the power to levy tax on sale of goods. Now we're looking at a GST system where both the centre as well as the state would be levying tax on all transactions. So they'll have equal powers to levy tax on all transactions. So this requires a change within the constitutional framework itself. So that's why a constitutional amendment is being proposed. The Constitutional Amendment Bill is currently before the Joint Parliamentary Committee. There are comments being sought from the GPC. So those comments are yet to come by.
What is the current status on GST?
Earlier this month, there was a meeting in Missouri where the state finance ministers met over a couple of days. There has been some movement, at least in the recent months, on GST. And essentially what has happened is there are three committees which have been set up. One to look into the threshold limit, another to look at the place of supply routes, essentially how interstate transactions would work, another to look at the revenue neutral rate. During the meeting in Missouri, there was a suggestion by the Committee on Threshold Limit that suggested that the threshold should be kept at 25 lakhs. This has been put forth to the states. They have to get back and revert on whether this would be acceptable. As far as the revenue neutral rate is concerned, there's been a recommendation to the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy requesting them for a recommendation on what would be the appropriate R&R rate. So we're waiting for that. So we have to wait and see how that progresses. There were other points actually which I want to also mention, which were discussed during the meeting. It was suggested that only assessees above a particular turnover, above 1.5 crores, would come within the purview of control of both the centre as well as the state. So smaller assessees, it was being suggested, should be only required to come within the purview of the state. There was also a discussion around a composition rate of approximately 0.5% being levied on smaller dealers, so those in the range of say 25 to 65 lakhs. So they pay tax only on a composition basis.
And where are we headed to from here on GST?
So as we discussed, there's still a lot to be achieved on GST, a lot of work required. We have the Constitutional Amendment Bill, which is pending ratification in Parliament, and this will also need approval by 50% of the states. That's one. Second is we need to have a robust IT framework to facilitate and monitor GST compliance. We also need to have agreement amongst all the states. They are the most important stakeholders in this entire revamp of the indirect tax regime. So that's still yet to be achieved on various fronts. There is a meeting again amongst the finance ministers next month. This is happening in Shillong, and during this meeting, apart from the regular issues, they will also be touching upon another subject, which is treatment of certain states like Tripura, Uttarakhand, Himachal, Assam, whether special status should be provided and extended to these states.
Do you think GST is required?
Yes, very much so. We have, like we talked about right at the beginning of today's discussion, many factors that are there in the Indian indirect tax system which are really slowing down growth of the economy. So I personally believe that GST would be good for business, good for industry, good for the economy as a whole. It will reduce transaction costs, it should make compliance simpler. And yes, I definitely believe that we need GST.
Thank you, Saloni. So this was Saloni Roy, Senior Director, Deloitte India, sharing her insights about GST. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such videos. Keep watching.